Welcome to the Buddhistisches Tor Berlin podcast. Here we share talks and reflections from our Buddhist center in Berlin, exploring themes such as meditation, ethics, and the path of awakening in everyday life. We are part of the Triratna Buddhist community, and our talks are offered freely in a spirit of generosity. We hope this episode supports your practice and your life. So if you were here last week, or if you managed to listen to the talk from last week on the podcast that was posted in the WhatsApp group, you'll know that I was speaking on a Buddhist's response to global crises. So that was the title last week, a Buddhist's response to global crises. And as I said, I chose my words carefully, so it's a Buddhist's with an apostrophe S, and that Buddhist was me. So I was talking more from a personal perspective. How am I trying to respond to the things and the events that I see unfolding around me? And I was using the story or the myth, the archetypal story or legend of the Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara to explore that theme. So Avalokiteshvara in the story is a great Bodhisattva. So Bodhisattva is a being, a sattva who is concerned only with Bodhi or enlightenment. And not just for his own sake, but for the sake of all others. Yeah, so Avalokiteshvara is concerned with the welfare of all others. And in the story, he begins by making this great vow to his teacher that if, as he's working for the benefit of all beings, he has one single selfish thought, then he would just break into 1,000 pieces. Yeah, so may I never have such a selfish thought, and if I do, I'll break into 1,000 pieces. And then he worked tirelessly for many, I don't know how long, I forget in the story, but he works very hard to alleviate the suffering of others. And then one day he stops and he looks out on the world and he just sees all the suffering is going on and on and on. I think that the text I was reading last week, it's something like the world was like an ocean of fire. And he saw the sorrows of other beings. He wept, and then he had the thought, what's the use? What's the point? Making all this work and not making any difference, and then he broke into 1,000 pieces. But at that point, as I was saying last week, something else emerged. So something broke, but something else emerged. So the Buddha Amitabha appeared before him, reassembled him from the 1,000 pieces into the figure that we've got depicted on the wall there. So this Bodhisattva figure with 1,000 arms and 11 heads to help alleviate the suffering of the world. So it's an inspiring story, an inspiring myth. And I was relating to that personally by saying that I've been a Buddhist for 15 years. I look around me, I can see that it's had a positive effect on myself and some other people around me, but when I look at the world, is it making a difference? That was the question and the exploration. And I was drawing inspiration from that story in the sense that if we can just begin to break down some of the self-concern and the belief in our own center, identity center, maybe as that breaks up, then something else can begin to come in or come through. So that's a rough outline of some of the things I said last time. There was one detail in that story that I left aside, because I thought last week it doesn't really matter, I'll just edit that bit out. So that one detail I left out was that when Avalokiteshvara has made his vow, and he's worked for the benefit of others, and he looks out on the world and he sees that there's just as much suffering, if not more suffering going on. At that point, he weeps, and his tears begin to form a pool of water. And on the pool, a lotus suddenly appears, and seated on the lotus is a beautiful goddess that we call Green Tara. And there's an image of Green Tara on the shrine. And she blesses him, helps him, influences him. And then the rest of the story continues. So I just want to return to that detail because there's something in that part of the story, the appearance of Green Tara in the pool of tears, that I think offers us another aspect of a possible response to the difficulties and tragedies that we see around the world all the time. Yep, so let's just, in a way, I'm inviting this Green Tara into the space, and I'll say more about her as we go on. But let's just allow that part of the story to unfold like the lotus unfolded in the pool. So I want to talk today about happiness. So happiness as an aspect of a response to the suffering of the world. So that's different, isn't it? Last week I talked a lot about suffering and being able to witness and be with suffering without either going into a kind of shutdown state and just wanting to not see it, or without going into an anxious response of trying to fix things. But can we just be with and witness suffering enough for something to begin to break down and for something else to come in its place? The word for suffering in Buddhism is dukkha. Yeah, so that was last week. This week, as I say, it's happiness, and the word in Buddhism is sukha. So not to be confused, but dukkha and sukha. This week's sukha. Two things to bear in mind, like as we set out on this kind of different track today. First of all, like last week, my appeal to you is to have beginner's mind towards happiness. So this word sukha, what does it really mean? Let's just, whatever ideas we have about what happiness is and how to achieve it, let's just put that to one side and come at it fresh. So last week I quoted this poem by Sangharakshita, The Unseen Flower, as an encouragement to do that with compassion. So whatever ideas we have about compassion, put them aside. I think in the poem we could just as easily substitute the word compassion for happiness, and it still works. So then the poem would go something like this. Happiness is far more than an emotion. It's something that springs up in the emptiness when you yourself are not there, so that you do not know anything about it. Nobody, in fact, knows anything about it. If they knew it, it would not be happiness. But they can only smell the scent of the unseen flower that blooms in the heart of the void. Yeah. So happiness, I'm proposing, and I think Buddhism proposes, is far more than just an emotion. It's more than something that we just feel or don't feel. So let's have that open beginner's mind to whatever happiness might be. The other thing I want to bring in and for you to bear in mind that in talking about happiness, this isn't a kind of balancing act against last week where we talked about dukkha. It was quite emotionally stirring and potentially challenging. It's not that I'm talking about happiness this week as a kind of band-aid or plaster to make us all feel better. Yeah, it's not that we're just balancing things out. Suffering, if we do that, the problem is that we might lose some of the advantages that I was describing last week that come from being able to look and turn towards suffering or dukkha. So last week, as I was saying, if we can experience suffering, be with suffering, see suffering long enough, then something begins to break down. This sense of identity at the center of things that we believe in can begin to open up to some extent and allow something else through. If now we just talk about happiness as a way of avoiding that, or trying to fix it, like let's be happy instead, then we lose that possibility of suffering as a gateway into a deeper way of being and understanding. So the proposal then is to explore happiness not as a balancing proposition, but to explore happiness as something that takes everything further, more deeper, more deeply still. Yeah? So then the proposition is, well, how do we fully experience and acknowledge and witness suffering and be happy at the same time? Because it might sound like a contradiction. Isn't it just that we're one or the other, and actually that's the whole problem? We want to be more happy and less, and suffer less. It could seem that that's a contradiction, or that there's some sort of compromise. That, okay, we suffer, but we are also happy as well sometimes. Yeah. I think Buddhism and the Buddhist perspective on happiness is that it is not just a balance against suffering or a counteraction of suffering. And if we treat happiness as being that, that might actually make suffering worse. Yeah. I'll say more about that in a moment. The Buddha's our example, obviously. That's why the Buddha sits in the middle of the room. And if we look at the Buddha's life, he seems to have been somebody who could hold both together at the same time. Suffering and happiness. Or as I said last week, heartbreak and happiness. So really able to see suffering and its causes, but also be happy, unimaginably happy. So it's just by historical development, or the particular course that Buddhism has taken, that it is known as Buddhism. I don't know if you know this, but the Buddha's name, Buddha means awake, the awakened one. But in the early texts, he's referred to by many other names. One of them is Sugata, and Sugata means happy one. So we could just as much be in a Sugatist center as a Buddhist center. Buddhistisches Tor, that would be, wouldn't it? Berlin. The happy gate. Yeah? It could just as much be called that. But things took a different turn, and Buddhism is what stuck. So the Buddha himself was known for being incredibly happy. And yet, as he famously said once, look at the world, it's on fire. It's on fire with suffering. So he seemed to be able to live those not as a contradiction. Yeah. Also his community, the people who were inspired by him and followed him, the way the Buddha talked about the Sangha was in terms of happiness. So there's these lines from the Dhammapada, one of the earliest texts, where the Buddha is quoted as saying, "Happy indeed we live." Happy indeed we live, what is it? I forget now. Friendly amid the haters. Among those who hate, we dwell free from hatred. Happy indeed we live, healthy amid the sick. Among those who are sick, we dwell free from sickness. Happy indeed we live, content amid the greedy. Among those who are greedy, we dwell free from greed. So I don't know how those lines land. It could sound a bit judgmental, couldn't it? Like, we're the ones who've got it all sorted out. We're the happy ones, the friendly ones, they're the haters. We're the content ones, they're the greedy ones. He doesn't mean it like that. I'm pretty convinced. I mean, on a relative level, the Buddha and his followers, they did set themselves up as a kind of radical alternative to society. They did have their own thing going on, let's say. But you don't have to go far in the Buddhist texts to find examples of followers of the Buddha really hating each other, falling out, having arguments. It's not that the Sangha, just because it existed, was free from greed, hatred, and delusion. So it can't mean that. What I think it does mean, I'll come to in a moment. So just stay with me. So happiness. What is happiness from a Buddhist point of view? What did the Buddha have to say about happiness and what it is? So in one of the suttas, one of the Buddha's teachings, sutta means thread. So we've got all these suttas or sutras, these threads of things he said that kind of trail through the ages, and we can pick up and follow and try to get a sense of what the Buddha had experienced by following his thread. And in one of these suttas, one of these threads, he talks about 3 levels of happiness. This is so classic Buddhism. There's always levels. There's always 3 levels that subdivide into 4 other categories. And in this case, that's what it's like. But let's just keep it simple and say there are 3 levels of happiness that the Buddha or the Sugata talked about. So the first level was sensuous happiness. So the happiness that comes through the 5 physical senses: seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, smelling. Yeah. So you can think of your own examples. Seeing the sun this morning, that was my sensual happiness. The first thing I did this morning when I rolled up the blind was the sun is out, joy, rather than cloud, dukkha. We hear somebody was playing the piano in the break very nicely, very beautifully. And I was sat here just waiting and hearing that sound, like, there's some joy in the experience of hearing something well played, beautiful music. So I won't multiply examples because there are millions and we experience them all the time. But that's the first level of happiness. And nothing wrong with that, obviously. I'll have more to say about sense pleasure later. But what the Buddha points out when he talks about this level of happiness is that because it's external, because it depends very much on our senses and how we're perceiving the external world, sounds and sights, etc., it's kind of out of our control, or it's less within our control. So we know that because whenever I start a talk, an ambulance goes past, and I start having to speak louder, and I start getting frustrated about that. So the sounds we don't really control. Whatever is going on out there will affect our environment. So that can be an issue. In other words, the pleasure of the senses is conditioned. So if those conditions are present, the sun is out, then I experience pleasure. If those conditions are not present and the clouds are there covering the sun, I don't feel the joy. So it's outside of my direct influence, or further outside than other types of happiness. Yeah? The second level of happiness is near amisa, that's the word. So amisa is the sensory happiness. Near amisa is the non-sensory, or something that's more to do with the mind. So it's not dependent on the 5 physical senses, it's something that comes from the mind, and therefore something that comes from within. So it's kind of inner source of happiness, an inner mental source of happiness. Which when the Buddha's talking about it, he speaks in terms of meditation. Maybe you were here, some of you, for Artaketu's talk about the Berghain and getting into the club. It wasn't just about that. It was about the hindrances in meditation and how to overcome the hindrances in meditation and the joy one experiences as one goes deeper in meditation. So that's an example of inner joy and happiness that can come from within. So if the first level is external, this is more internal, and in a way much more refined. But it's also still conditioned. Yeah, so whatever pleasure we might get through meditation, or it doesn't have to be meditation, doesn't it? Through mindfulness practice, where we feel that kind of inner source of radiance, happiness, joy, might still be dependent on conditions. So again, the ambulance could go past and it throws me out of that inner state of happiness. So it's more stable than just an external source of happiness, but it's still not completely bulletproof, let's say. The third level is, so the third level of happiness is nirvanic happiness. This is the highest form of happiness. So the happiness that is not conditioned. It doesn't depend on external sounds, sights, taste, touch. Doesn't even depend upon certain mental inner experience. It's free from all of that. It's a type of happiness that is free from any trace of self-orientation or self-centeredness. Sounds great. And also sounds a long way away. Yeah. So I have 43 years of experience of the first level of happiness. I'm glad to say I've never had a year where there's been no sensory enjoyment whatsoever. Yeah, so 43 years where that's been going on. I have some experience of an inner happiness and joy, particularly having found Buddhism and learned to meditate and living ethically and all the inner joy that brings. But I'm not at the level of nirvanic happiness. Maybe occasionally there's been glimpses or hints or suggestions of that. There must have been, or I wouldn't be here. I believe that is a possibility, but that is not my usual living state, just to be stating the obvious, perhaps. So yeah, it can feel a long way away, and this week, in wanting to come in and talk more about happiness, not as a balancing act, but to take things deeper, these three levels of happiness have been on my mind. And actually, the more I reflected on them, the more I felt like I just needed to break away from that particular model with those three levels. It's very neat and tidy, isn't it? And it's brilliant. Like to have that clarity about experience and clarity about the possibilities that are open to us in terms of how we experience happiness in our lives. It's fantastic. To just assume that the only level of happiness available to us is that which comes through the external senses. If that's our working model for life, trouble. Yeah? Because whatever we enjoy is going to change as the conditions change. So knowing that actually there's something I can do to cultivate an inner source of happiness, that is a fantastic gift. But then also to think, well, don't settle down for that, because there's something even more incredible. That gives you then a whole vision for life and what really happiness is or can be. So I cherish the fact that these teachings exist. But as my reflections went on during the week, I always have to do this, slightly rebel against the system and the structure. And I just went into exploring, well, a more simple question, what are the sources of happiness? So what have been the things in my life that have actually given me some sense of happiness on whatever level? Like, forget the levels now for a moment. What are the sources of happiness in our lives? So I just want to share 3 sources that have unfolded in my life in such a way that I would say I'm more happy and therefore able to influence other people in a positive way, or affect other people in a more positive way. And I think it's opening to that something else that we get in the Avalokiteshvara story, something else coming through, can happen or is more likely to happen if I'm in touch with these particular sources of happiness. So first one is the happiness that comes from serving something greater than myself. So the happiness that comes from serving something greater than myself. Like, I definitely serve myself. And I need to. We all need to, don't we? So I wake up in a morning and I serve myself by brushing my teeth, having breakfast, not necessarily in that order, but doing all those things, washing. We look after ourselves. Whatever we think about ourselves and whatever opinions we have about ourselves, we care deeply for ourselves, just in those small ways. We go to bed, we give ourselves some rest, some sleep. Maybe we do some exercise. Maybe we come to the Buddhist center on a Saturday morning because there's something here that we like or we enjoy or that we benefit from. So you're all here today because you're in some way caring for yourselves. So that's good. To serve ourselves, to care for ourselves is good. The problem comes when we only care for ourselves. When self-protection, self-concern is our vision, again, of life and what life is for. And that's a trap. Yeah, and that's a trap that I fall into every day. Is, yes, there's healthy serving myself, but then there's also plating up the food for different people and wanting a little bit more for myself. Those small things where I just rely on my own self-center and wanting a bit more for that and to protect that against other people. So if I'm only serving myself in that way, that's when it becomes problematic, or when, suffering arises. So serving something else or serving something greater than myself is something that has brought more and more happiness into my life. And I'd say I learned that before Buddhism. You don't have to be a Buddhist to understand that or to grasp that or to practice that. And I'm sure many of you in the room, whether you're Buddhists or not, have done that in many different ways in your life. So for myself, that became really quite apparent 15 years ago. I keep saying that a lot recently because it's 15 years ago that I found Buddhism. But just before that, for 4 months I went traveling in South America, and I spent 2 weeks as a tourist and going to parties and things. And after 2 weeks I was just bored. Like, it actually just got a bit boring going to a party, doing the same thing that I could have just done at home. What was the point in being all that way from home if that's all I was going to do? And I decided to start looking for opportunities to do something to help other people. In the course of the travels, even within a couple of weeks, I'd seen that conditions there were much more difficult for most people than they were from what I was used to. Not that I come from a kind of luxurious, rich and wealthy background, but still, it was a lot worse. And a bit like I was saying last week, just having the space to see that meant something else could start to stir in me. And I just wanted to do something to benefit others. Thought, if I'm going to be away all this time and have new experiences, why not make them experiences that are also beneficial to others? So I did various things, and what I found was that it was incredibly enjoyable, even if it was difficult, or even especially because it was difficult sometimes. So the example that really stands out in my mind was joining a building project in Peru, in a place called Pisco. Are there any Peruvians here? No. Oh, that's a shame. Anyway, I was in this place on the coast, Pisco, where there'd been a really bad earthquake, I think in 2007, a few years before I was there. And a group of people at the Burning Man Festival in America heard about the earthquake, and they just went there. No experience of earthquake relief as far as I could tell, but they just went there and they set up this project. And then it just carried on by people who were there handing on to people who came. And I came after 4 years or whatever of this going on. And day one, I ended up on this building site with no building experience. Nobody else had any building experience apart from one person. And we were building a house for somebody who'd lost their house in the earthquake. And it was a woman and her grandson. And they were basically living in a shed in the back somewhere. And we were building this house of bags of earth, basically. As I'm telling this, I'm suddenly thinking, have I told this story before? And people are like, oh, yeah. No? Okay. So we were filling these sacks with earth, then they dried, and then they were used as the bricks, so that in an earthquake there was less... you can see I've got no building experience, right? There was less potential for it to be such a disaster, let's say. So that involved working in the midday heat, shoveling dirt into bags, like hundreds and hundreds of them, hundreds and hundreds of times, with a group of volunteers from different parts of the world. And there was one day where I was, like I say, in the midday sun, sweating, really knackered, like really hurting. And I stopped and I just looked around at the others doing the back-breaking work. And I just felt this rush of joy. And the fact that, well, this is incredible. If these people, including myself, if we were being paid to do this, we wouldn't be working half as hard. But because we're doing it for somebody else, everybody is just giving it everything. And then at the end of the day, we'd all get in the truck and drive home exhausted. I just remember these drive home moments, like swaying on these bumpy roads and feeling so exhausted and happy. Yeah. So people are nodding and smiling. So you probably had experiences like that where something else is active in you and you're just giving and you find energy. And I think that is happiness. Obviously, it can go too far, you end up getting anxious about helping, and that's what I was talking about last week. But if we can clock that in that serving something greater than ourselves, there is joy, that joy can then just grow and grow and grow. Shortly after that, I discovered Buddhism. And that was great because I then discovered this whole story of Avalokiteshvara, this whole myth of the Bodhisattva working for the good of others. And I thought, that's it. That's what I want to serve and give my life to. That's why I became an order member, because I want to serve others in the way that I think is of ultimate benefit to other people. So that's why I'm sat here talking now. Not in a I'm the hero kind of way either. Hopefully I don't come across like that. It's just because, partly it's for my own enjoyment. I enjoy, maybe this does come across, I enjoy sitting here doing this and talking to you But I really believe that it is the answer to the global crises that I've been talking about for the last couple of weeks. If ever becoming a Buddhist becomes, if being a Buddhist becomes about just serving some kind of institution, I'm done. Like, I'm not here because I just want to prop up the fact that a Buddhist center exists. And if ever you see me and think you've lost track here and you're just propping up an institution, tell me. Yeah? Snap me out of it. Because the real motivation and the real reason to be here is to genuinely offer something, despite all my imperfections, say something, echo the words of the Buddha to some extent, so that helps you and other people to be less in suffering and more on the flight towards whatever nirvanic happiness is. So tell me, I'm serious. I can tell I have a strong view about this. Yeah. Okay, second source of happiness that I've been reflecting on is the happiness of the moment. Yeah, the happiness of the moment. So if serving others is having let's say a grand vision, vision for life, happiness can come from that, but I think happiness can also come from the moment, being present. And some of you might have been here a few weeks ago. I was leading this exercise where we just stopped and we just had a chance to look around the room and see what we see. You can do it now if you like. Just take a moment, look around and see what you see. It's nice just to stop is nice. Forget what we see, but just to stop. You don't have to listen to me, I don't have to talk. So when I did that on the previous occasion, there was a huge shadow across the wall. And I remember at the time mentioning it, because I was like, wow, there's this beautiful shadow. It's not now, you don't have to turn around. But that's the kind of thing we notice, isn't it? When we just are able to stop whatever we're busy with, what becomes available to us, I think, is beauty. Beauty is always there and always available to us in some form or another. And if we stop and drop into the moment, perhaps we catch a glimpse of that. And this, I think, this is what this appearance of green Tara on the pool of Avalokiteshvara's tears, I see something of what I'm saying in that image. Because even at times of difficulty, even at times of real pain or sickness, you know, when you know or you feel that life is just not going well for you, sometimes, despite that, there's moments where we just stop and something else breaks through. And what breaks through is beautiful. Yeah, and it's against all the odds, isn't it? It's like I'm having a crap time, I'm sick, I just want to be better, but then, whatever it is, the bird song. And something in us just sees something beautiful and the experience is altered. Not balanced, because it's not that the pain goes away. And it might even be that because of the pain and because of the suffering that we're in touch with, somehow the beautiful thing is even more beautiful. Strikes us even more strongly because both of those things are present at the same time. And I think that's what we've got with Tara. There's the sorrow of Avalokiteshvara, the tears, the pool of water, and then this appearance miraculous appearance of beauty. And I think the more I am able to stop and just drop into presence and be open to the senses, and yes, sense pleasure we have to be careful with, and if we enjoy something and we want more and more of it, then that gets into difficulties. But don't let that kind of put you off enjoying healthy experiences through the senses that take us out of our own identity center and self-concern. Okay, I'm going to read a bit of a poem. I was just thinking about the time, but it's fine. So this is from a poem by Roger Keyes. We've had it before, Hokusai Says. So he's talking about the Japanese artist Hokusai and what his images say. So Hokusai says, this is just an extract from it, I can't read the whole thing. Hokusai says, everything is alive. Shells, buildings, people, fish, mountains, trees, wood is alive. Water is alive. Everything has its own life. Everything lives inside us. He says, live with the world inside you. He says, it doesn't matter if you draw or write books. It doesn't matter if you saw wood or catch fish. It doesn't matter if you sit at home and stare at the ants on your veranda, or the shadows of the trees and grasses in your garden. It matters that you care. It matters that you feel. It matters that you notice. It matters that life lives through you. Contentment is life living through you. Joy is life living through you. So I think that's what becomes available if there are moments where we just stop and notice. That's what he's saying. It matters that we care. Just notice. And then there's the opportunity for this experience of life living through us. Whatever life is throwing at us, life is living through us. And there's something, I think, in that is joyful. Okay, so the third source of happiness from my reflections. The third one, I'm going to use the Buddhist word. So the Buddhist word for this is mudita. Mudita, which is a translation, or translated into English, something like sympathetic joy. Basically the joy that we feel at seeing the joy of others. So it's a resonance, if you like, or a vibration with the joy of other people. We don't experience it directly, but because we see another person experiencing joy, some joy emerges in us, and that is mudita. Yeah. I had a very strong experience of this last week after the talk. So as you know, I was speaking about suffering. It was strong. I felt the strength of speaking about that, having reflected on it all week as well. So I gave the talk, I left the Buddhist center, I walked home to my apartment, which is just 10 minutes past the hospital. And just outside my apartment, on the street, there was a man with his 3 children. And the kids were about this tall, maybe 6 or 7. Obviously a family, brothers, 2 girls and 1 boy. And each of the 3 children was wearing what were obviously a brand new pair of roller skates. Like there was not a single mark or scratch on them, so they were definitely brand new. And they were brightly colored, like orange, blue, pink. And the kids, it was obviously their maiden voyage on these roller skates. They could hardly use them. They were just walking. And the wheel sometimes would take them into a bit of a slide, but they were kind of walking around. And they were so happy. And they were looking at everybody else in the street as if to say, have you seen these? And I saw this and I was just so moved. Like, it was so wonderful. So wonderful. Luckily, I was right near my home because it brought tears to my eyes, and I quickly got inside my apartment and then cried with joy in mudita. Yeah. And on another day, I would have just completely missed that. I just wouldn't have even seen it. And what a shame it is when there's joy like that, and it can feed joy in us, and we miss it. But that day, I noticed it. Yeah. And I think I probably noticed it because of all the reflection on suffering. Yeah. So not instead of. It's not like I saw these kids on roller skates like, it's not all bad. No, there is suffering. That is the Buddha's first noble truth. And no amount of putting happiness on the other side is going to get rid of that. There is suffering, and there are 3 children playing on roller skates, and it's beautiful. And being able to hold that range of experience, that's what I want to give my life to. That's why I'm here again, and what I want to share, the possibility of that, to share the possibility of that. So I think, it's interesting how reflecting on suffering can open the door to joy, and particularly in this case, this mudita, this sympathetic joy. And what gets in the way is often just being busy and not noticing, and not having the radar on for what's going on for other people, the suffering and the joy of other people, and the self-concern that's there, and that gets in the way. And if that wasn't there, imagine what that would be like. Something else that gets in the way. I can feel myself wanting to avoid this, but I'm going to go there. With mudita, sympathetic joy, it's said that the far enemy of that, the thing that really gets in the way of mudita, sympathetic joy, is envy. So one thing that blocks sympathetic joy is envy. And envy is a real shame. It's a horrible thing to experience, isn't it? Because it's like hatred. So when we dislike somebody, we hate them, that's painful. That's painful for us, isn't it? Nobody enjoys that, I'm sure. That's painful, but with envy, there's the dislike, and there's the feeling that they have something that I wish I had. They have something I don't have. So there's hatred, and there's a sense of inner poverty, inner lack, and that is so painful. Yeah. It's painful, and it's very hard to admit to as well. And I experience it. So I'm outing myself now as a person who sometimes has envious thoughts. And I'm sure we all, to some degree, have these envious thoughts crossing our minds. For example, sometimes one of the other members of our wonderful team will sit here and give the talk. And they give this incredible exposition of the word of the Buddha, and everybody's smiling and enjoying it and benefiting from it. And sometimes it crosses my mind like, you bastard. That's better than the talk I gave last week. I'm serious. It's funny, but those thoughts cross my mind. What a shame. Yeah. And it's so hard to admit to that, isn't it? Because it's, yeah. I don't need to say any more on that topic. I said too much. But it's something just to reflect on that, yeah, that gets in the way of our own happiness. Yeah. And it's understandable. We all have habits and these things come up. And it's better to acknowledge them, even to share them perhaps with people that we trust so that those things are out. And then we can transform. Yeah. So, there we go. That's my exploration then. This has been a part 2, hasn't it, to a Buddhist response to global crises. So if part 1 was responding with awareness, responding by really seeing, not turning away from, not shutting down, not trying to prematurely fix, but to be aware and to see suffering around us, and see that the causes of that suffering are ambulances. The causes of that suffering are the belief in a fixed identity center. An awareness of that can begin to break that up and allow something through. So awareness is a key part of my response, a Buddhist response to global crises. The other one is love. Yeah. So the other one is, I mean, I said joy at the beginning, but I think joy comes through the cultivation of love, or metta, as we say in the Buddhist tradition. Because metta is always the appropriate emotion. This thing we've all practiced this morning, it is an amazing thing to cultivate because it is always, always, always the appropriate response to any experience in your life is metta. And if metta comes into contact with suffering, it becomes compassion. Don't worry about being a compassionate person. Just cultivate metta, and when you meet suffering, compassion will arise, whatever that is. And similarly, if you meet joy, if metta meets joy, it becomes sympathetic joy. It becomes mudita. So that is the absolute core emotion that we can cultivate. Awareness and metta, or love. And I really do believe that that is the response to the events around the world. Whatever specific form awareness and love take, at the root, any effective response must have those two things. Thank you.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this talk, you are warmly invited to visit Buddhistisches Tor Berlin in Kreuzberg. We offer meditation, Dharma talks, and courses that support practice in everyday life. You'll find more information in the episode description.